Chapter 6. Can the souls ever be mistaken? Would God allow this? Yes, not about existing things, but about the future. Yet there is no imperfection on their part in all this. Does not God himself sometimes seem to change the order of his plans? For example, it may happen that God wishes to chastise a kingdom, a province, or person. That is the intention he seems to manifest. But by prayers or other means taken by that country, province, or person to disarm God's anger, he may grant full forgiveness or a partial remission of his designs according to his infinite wisdom. Often he also allows events to be foretold, or he gives knowledge of them to some soul, so that they may warn others and appease his vengeance. His mercy is so great that he only punishes in the very last extremity. In the case of the person of whom you spoke to me the other day, I did not at that moment tell you the events as they turned out. However, it was thus that God made me see them, but because she changed her conduct somewhat, God only gave her half the punishment which he had in store for her if she had continued in her former dispositions. In this way, we can often appear to be mistaken. Are many Protestants saved? By the mercy of God, a certain number of Protestants are saved, but their purgatory is for many long and rigorous. It is true they have not abused grace like many Catholics, but neither have they had the marvellous graces of the sacraments and the other helps of the true religion. Thus their expiation in purgatory is prolonged. I am speaking lower than usual, because for the last 8 days you have been speaking in too low a voice to God in saying the divine office. When you begin to speak louder, I will do the same. Do you know in purgatory about the persecution of the Church? Do you know when it will end? We know that the Church is being persecuted, and we pray for her triumph, but when this will be, I do not know. Some of the souls may know, but I do not. In purgatory, the souls are not entirely occupied by their sufferings. They pray for all the interests of God, and for those who shorten their sufferings. They pray and thank God for his infinite mercies in their regard, because the space between purgatory and hell, for some of them, was very narrow, and they barely escaped falling into hell. Judge then what the gratitude of those souls is who were barely rescued from Satan. I cannot explain to you how it is that we no longer see the earth as you do. This can only be understood when the soul has left the body, because then the earth which it has left, leaving there its body, seems to it as a mere speck compared with the vast unending horizons of eternity which then open before it. You must never take any notice of what will be said of you. The real merit of a person consists not in accepting with patience rebukes which she has merited more or less, but in accepting patiently those she has not merited, especially if she has done her utmost to do good, and is then reproached for it. I receive far more relief from one of your actions done in union with Jesus than from a vocal prayer, because what is it that God hears? He hears all that is done with an interior spirit. The more closely a soul is united with God, the more readily does he grant all it asks. A soul intimately united with Jesus is the mistress of his heart. Strive then after this union which Jesus has desired to have with you for so long. You want to please him? Well, this is the only way. You approach closer to his heart by great attention to the least manifestations of his holy will. He must be able to twist and turn you as he likes, and he must never find any resistance on your part. When you have arrived at that point, you will begin to see and understand his goodness. Be really in earnest about working for God alone. Never seek any witness but him for any of your actions. Be very careful never to say to yourself, when performing any act, no matter how trivial it may be, such as, "If I do things this way, I shall please so and so. I will do this to please such a person. God does not like these human reasonings in anyone, still less in you. Direct your intentions always with the sole desire of pleasing Jesus, and Him only. If by so acting you manage to please someone else, so much the better, and if the contrary happens, that cannot be helped. God will be pleased, and that is all that ought to matter to you. December 8th, 2 o'clock, the Immaculate Conception. Alas, how many lives seem to be filled with good works, and at death are found empty. This is because all those actions that appeared to be good, all those showy works, all that conduct that seemed irreproachable, all these were not done for Jesus alone. Some will have their eyes opened when they come here to this life. On earth they wanted to be made much of, to shine, to be thought very exact in religious observances, to be esteemed as perfect religious. This is the mainspring of so many lives. If you only knew how few people work for God and act for Him alone. Alas, at death, when they are no longer blinded, what regrets they will have. If only sometimes they would think of eternity. What is life compared to that day which will have no evening for the elect, or to that night which will have no dawning for the damned? On earth people attach themselves to everything and everyone except to Him, who alone ought to have our love, and to whom we refuse it. Jesus in the tabernacle waits for souls to love Him, and He finds none. Hardly one soul in 1,000 loves Him as it should. You love Him and make up to Him for this guilty indifference which exists all over the world. But in purgatory souls really love, do they not? Yes, but it is a love of reparation, and if on earth we had loved Him as we ought to have done, there would not be so many of us here in this place of expiation. Is Jesus well loved in heaven? In heaven they love Him very much. There He is compensated. But Jesus wants more than that. He wants to be loved on earth, on that earth where He annihilates Himself in every tabernacle, in order to be approached more easily, and yet He is refused. People pass before a church with more indifference than they would before any public monument. If by chance they go into the holy place, it is only to insult still more the divine captive who dwells there, namely, by their coldness and their irreverence. Their prayers are said hurriedly and without attention, instead of speaking to Him from their hearts, and saying words of friendship and gratitude for all His favors to them. Tell Father P that God expects from him this love which he so rarely meets with. He expects it from him who comes each day so close to Jesus, whom he receives into his heart. Oh, tell him that in those blessed moments he may repair by his tender love the indifference of so many ungrateful souls. His heart must melt with love before Jesus in the host, and intercede for those priests who enjoy the same privilege that he does, yet treat the sacred mysteries with a frozen heart which remains as cold as marble to Jesus. Every day let his union with God become closer, in order to prepare himself worthily for the great graces which Jesus has in store for him. I have told you there are some souls who do their purgatory at the foot of the altar. They are not there for faults they have committed in church, because those faults which attack Jesus directly, Jesus present in the tabernacle, are punished with terrible severity in purgatory. The souls that are there in adoration are there as a reward for their reverent behavior in the sacred presence. They suffer less than if they were in purgatory itself, and Jesus, whom they contemplate with the eyes of their soul and of faith, softens their pains by his invisible presence. January 1880. On Christmas night, thousands of souls leave their place of expiation for heaven, but many remain, and I am of their number. You sometimes say to me that the perfecting of a soul is a long process, and you are also astonished that after so many prayers I am so long deprived of the sight of God. Alas, the perfecting of a soul does not take any less time in purgatory than upon earth. There are a number of souls, but they are very few, who have only a few venial sins to expiate. These do not stay long in purgatory. A few well-said prayers, a few sacrifices soon deliver them. But when there are souls like mine, and that is nearly all, whose lives have been so empty and who paid little or no attention to their salvation, then their whole life has to be begun over again in this place of expiation. The soul has to perfect itself all over again and love and desire him whom it did not love sufficiently on earth. This is the reason why the deliverance of some souls is delayed. God has given me a very great grace in allowing me to ask for prayers. I did not deserve it, but without this I would have remained like most of those here, for years and years more. Do religious and those of the same family communicate together? In purgatory, as in heaven, religious and those of the same family are not always together. Souls do not all merit the same punishment or the same reward. Still in purgatory we do recognize others, and if God permits it we may communicate with one another. Are you able to receive a prayer or a thought of friends who are dead, and let them know of the remembrance we have of them? Thoughts of earth can be made known here, but there is not much in all that, because I have already told you that the souls in purgatory know those persons who interest themselves in their behalf on earth. God sometimes allows those on earth to receive a prayer, a warning, or some information. All that I told you about St. Michael was from himself, and all that I said about your father was from God. All the commissions that you have so often given me for the other world I have always done, but all these things are subordinate to the divine will. Does everyone in purgatory know the faults of the others as they will be known at the last judgment? In general, we do not know about the faults of one another, except in some rare cases when God has particular designs with regard to certain souls, but it is to few that he acts in this way. Have you a more perfect knowledge of God than we have? What a question! Of course we know him far better and love him far more. Indeed, it is just that which causes our greatest suffering. On earth you simply do not know what God is. There each one of you has an idea of what you think God is, according to your very limited knowledge. But when we leave our covering of clay, and when nothing impedes the liberty of our souls, we at last begin to know God, his goodness, his mercy, his love. After this clearer view and the thirst for union, our souls yearn for God. This is our very life, and we are forever repulsed because we are not sufficiently pure. This, in a word, is our worst suffering, the hardest, the most bitter. Oh, if only we were allowed to come back to earth. After knowing what God really is, what a different life we would lead. But what useless regrets! And yet on earth you do not think of these things, and live as if you were blind. Eternity is of no account to you. The earth, which is only a journey and receives only the body which in itself turns to dust, is the sole object to which almost all of your desires tend, and you do not even think of heaven, while Jesus and his love are entirely forgotten. Do the souls in purgatory console each other mutually? In purgatory our only consolation, our only hope is in God alone. On earth, God sometimes allows us to be consoled in our sufferings of soul or body by the heart of a friend. But then again, if the love of Jesus does not fill that heart, the consolations are vain. Here the souls are lost, drowned as it were, in the divine will, and God alone can soften their pains. Each soul is tormented according to its guilt, but all have one common sorrow that surpasses all the rest, the absence of Jesus, who is our very element, our life, our all, and we are separated from him through our own fault. After an action you must not waste your time going over it to examine if you have done well or ill. Certainly, you must examine your actions each day to be able to do better in the future, but this must not be at the expense of the soul. God loves simple souls. You must go to him, therefore, with good will, always ready to sacrifice yourself to please him. You must act with Jesus as a little child does with its mother, trusting in his goodness, and placing all your spiritual and temporal interest with great confidence in his divine hands. Having done this, try to please him in everything, without troubling yourself about anything else. God does not regard great acts or heroic deeds as much as he does simple actions or small sacrifices, provided these are done with love for him. Sometimes even a tiny sacrifice, which was known only to God and to the soul, may be far more meritorious than a great one that was loudly applauded. One must be very interior in order not to take for oneself any of the praise given one. God seeks souls empty of self so as to fill them with his love. He finds but a few. Self-love leaves no place for Jesus. Do not let any opportunity to mortify self pass by, especially interior mortification. Jesus has many graces to give you during Lent. Therefore, prepare yourself by a redoubling of your fervour, but above all, love Jesus. He is so little loved by the world and so outraged by it. The Blessed Virgin loves you very much. On your part, love her with all your heart, and do all you can to procure her the greatest possible glory. You will never be able to understand well enough the goodness of God. If people only took the trouble to think about it sometimes, it would be enough to make them all saints, but they do not sufficiently know the merciful goodness of the heart of Jesus in the world. Each one measures it according to his way of thinking, and this way is wrong. This is the reason why they pray badly. Yes, very few people pray as Jesus wants them to pray. They are wanting in confidence, and yet Jesus only grants our prayers according to the ardour of our desires and the strength of our love. This is why the graces we often ask for remain ineffective. To be happy in religion, we should be deaf, dumb, and blind. That is to say, we must hear many things that we could repeat, but which are far better kept to ourselves. We shall never be sorry for having kept silent. We are obliged to see and hear many things, and to act as if we had neither seen nor understood. Oh, if you only knew how paltry these little nothings are, about which some make such a fuss. The devil makes use of these little straws to check the progress of a soul and obstruct all the good that she is called to do. Do not let yourself be caught in these meshes. Have a large heart and pass over all these little miseries without even noticing them. Jesus should be a sufficient attraction for you to prevent your being hindered by anything whatsoever outside of him. See everything as coming from his bounty, whether he afflicts or consoles you. It is his love that arranges everything for the benefit of his friends. Never allow yourself to be discouraged. In a few hours, or even in the twinkling of an eye, Jesus could bring you to the summit of perfection, which he desires for you. But no, he prefers your own efforts, and he wants you to see for yourself how hard and rugged is the way to perfection. Be very generous. Jesus has bestowed more graces on you than on many others, and he will give you still more. But in return he hopes to find in you a soul devoted to him and ready for any sacrifice. Above all, he wants of you great love, and when you have fought against yourself and your failings and acted in a spirit of profound faith, then will faith seem a reality. Before this can take place, you must act as if Jesus were always visibly present to you in a natural way, whereas his presence is supernatural. Preachers and directors of souls do good only in proportion to their union with Jesus. In their spirit of prayer and in watching over their interior, they must always have their eyes directed towards Jesus, sacrificing all for the salvation of the souls entrusted to their care.